Number 1059, Gama-li-el. Gama-li-el, a renowned teacher of the law. Gama-li-el, a noted Pharisee and teacher of Saul. We know that Saul became the Apostle Paul to the Gentiles, right? And we know that the Apostle Paul's teacher in the Spirit was God Himself, the Spirit. And what I want to show you guys is that his teacher in the flesh, the name of his teacher, Gama-li-el, is a foreshadow of Paul's teacher in the Spirit, God. Let's take a look at the word Gama-li-el. Gamma rays have so much penetrating power that several inches of a dense material like lead or even a few feet of concrete may be required to stop them. Gamma rays can pass completely through the human body. As they pass through, they can cause ionizations that damage tissue and DNA. This is why you can't be in the presence of God as you are, because you just burn up and die. And so we see this word gamma in Paul's earthly teacher, which was a man, and his full name was Gama-li-el. Now, we can see the last part of his name, El, Gama-li-el. El means God. You see these clues in these words, how they break down. And so that's what this is. His earthly teacher was a foreshadowing and hints and clues to who his future teacher would be, which would be the Spirit of God. And this is interesting to me because Paul had no idea. He was trained, for his whole life in the law perfectly by this guy named Gama-li-el, right, which was a Pharisee. And he probably said his name every day or thought of his name every day, had no idea what God was actually doing at the time. But God knew the future, but Paul didn't. Isn't that all of our lives, right? The great setup for the future. And then sometimes when things happen and we look back and reflect, or we get remembrance of things, we go, oh, God shows us this is why this happened and this is why that happened. And so that's what God was doing with the name of Paul's earthly teacher in the law. But who taught Paul grace in the Spirit? God. And this is interesting to me because the people that Paul went to have kind of the same testimony as they were Jews who were, perfected in the law, or at least knew it perfectly, and he tried to teach grace to them. So Paul is kind of a type and shadow of the Spirit, just like we are all types and shadows of the Spirit to some degree, right? Because we're supposed to have the mind of Christ. We're supposed to be ambassadors for Christ, right? So we are representing God in that sense. And it's really amazing to me, though, how God uses words like this. And I mean, Paul, his whole life, he had no idea, and it was right in front of him the whole time. God was showing him, this is your teacher, but I'm showing you in his name that I'm going to be your teacher. That's amazing. You never put, but you can't see things unless God wakes you up and shows you things. And that's revelation. So now we get to look back and go, whoa, that's amazing. And again, the Apostle Paul's life is a testimony to law and grace. You see both, is dichotomy the word for it? I'm not sure. But you see both polarizations of both, I guess you could say. They're both polarized in Paul's life. Hardcore law, even up to having people jailed and killed, and then hardcore grace. That's pretty cool. And we kind of see that story played out in Christians today. Some people are hardcore law, and then some people are hardcore grace. And, what I found is that there's a happy medium, and you get that in Romans plenty of times, shall we sin because we're under grace and not the law? God forbid. So, that's really, to me, where I'm at. And, there's a lot of different ideas on how that works. But it's interesting because I think that, all the stories in the Bible, we can see pieces of our lives in every one of the people in the Bible, even the bad guys, right? And so sometimes the good guys are actually the bad guys too in the Bible, like King David did some horrible stuff, but of course he repented, and I like the saying where it says angels never make mistakes, devils never repent, and man makes mistakes and gets back up, right? So that's just very interesting to me, all of this. One last thing that I think about is Ecclesiastes 1:9 and Ecclesiastes 3:15 when it says that there's nothing new under the sun and everything basically repeats itself. And I see that that even applies to people's lives. They're kind of all divided, but they're all the same in one sense or another. Repeating patterns. It's very interesting to me.
This is music that's been destined for this time and age, bringing the message with solutions that prepares a way. While we're still human, moving closer towards the judgment day, they have invaded, grooming sheep as they set the stage. I fear no evil, I got Jesus, my deliverer. I've been forgiven, saved, no longer a prisoner. I've been redeemed, made, I'm an alien, a visitor. That's right, I'm freed, I'm remade with the signature. Got a new vision, I've been saved because his son is risen. It's a decision that was made to send me on this mission, exposing lies and proclaiming truth without no fear. We see the signs of the times and we shout it clear. Unfolding prophecy that's obviously happening, erupting rapidly, it's absolutely baffling. We cannot panic even if they plan a whole pandemic. We knew eugenics was a scam to hybridize genetics. Needed a lie to unite the world to all obey. They've always tried throughout time to change our DNA, paving the way for the Antichrist and one world government where sheep are lining up to take the mark, they're loving it. What in the world could be happening when everyone that you know's been controlled into panicking? Mind control like the mannequin. Is this a sign of the times? Revelation unleashing. What in the world could be happening when everyone that you know's been controlled into panicking? Mind control like the mannequin. Is this a sign of the times? Revelation